Sliders or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that sentiment. Would be an odd choice for a movie. I think that, like, knowing that was going to be impossible to produce, and having Reitman, you know, kind of reject that idea and talk about what he saw the movie as being, you know, kind of them starting a business, and then bringing in Harold Ramis, who had written on Animal House, and I believe he directed Caddyshack. I don't know if he contributed that script, but I find it hard to believe that he didn't. But I think bringing in Harold Ramis to kind of ground Aykroyd's super ambitious idea was a smart move. But we talked about what the original idea was. We need to talk about what the original cast was.
Let's do it.
Because that was what the interesting thing was in the beginning was, you know, it was supposed to be Aykroyd, it was supposed to be John Belushi and Eddie Murphy. You know, John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, I mean, Eddie Murphy too, but not at the same time. They were all on Saturday Night Live. Eddie Murphy was a few years past the heyday of Belushi and Aykroyd. But Aykroyd and Belushi had done both Saturday Night Live. They had done 1941 for Steven Spielberg. They had done The Blues Brothers. And there was at least one more movie that they're in together. I think it's Neighbors. It's called Neighbors. I'm trying to think. Showtime had a pretty good John Belushi documentary a few months ago that I remember watching, and I was trying to think of what the other movie that he did with Aykroyd was. But he obviously, you know, he and John Belushi were super close. And then just before Ghostbusters, Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy had done Trading Places together. So he had worked with those guys before, and that was the original team was John Belushi and Eddie Murphy. Unfortunately, you know, John Belushi passed away. So they couldn't do that, and they were trying to figure out who to replace him with. And ended up being Bill Murray, but after a lot of back and forth. And Bill Murray, I don't know if you know, but he doesn't sign on to things very easily.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, maybe I'll do it, maybe I'll show up. And he's kind of hard to get a hold of. I don't even think he has an agent. He just kind of makes his own choices. So trying to get Bill Murray was a little difficult for them. And I love John Belushi, don't get me wrong. I mean, you know that I love the Blues Brothers. And even Animal House is great, and he's great in it. And fuck John Landis, just to say that again. But kind of like the concept of the interdimensional Ghostbusters, I kind of find it hard to believe that the movie would be as funny if John Belushi was in it instead of Bill Murray. And it pains me to say that, because Belushi is great, and he and Aykroyd were great together, but Murray makes the movie. I think that's fairly obvious. And Aykroyd knew Bill Murray from Saturday Night Live as well. Ivan Reitman had directed Meatballs and Stripes, both with Bill Murray. Harold Ramis is in Stripes, and Stripes was very successful. So that was kind of they wanted Reitman to direct, and he brought in. He obviously worked very well with Bill Murray, so that was one of the reasons why they wanted him for the part. But even getting him to do the movie was fairly hard. So once they get the screenplay into a movie that they can actually make. You know, with Aykroyd and Ramis on it. They are set up at Columbia Pictures, which is where Reitman made Stripes. And they're set up there. They're pitching the movie to Columbia Pictures, specifically to a guy by the name of Frank Price, who was, you know, he's an executive, the head of Columbia at the time, and he says he'll greenlight the movie if they can have it ready by June of 1984, and I think this is May of 1983 that they're having this conversation. So they have like 13 months, basically, from the time that he's pitching the movie to them to have a completed product in the theater, and that's a pretty quick turnaround. That seems like a long time, but for a movie that's pretty ambitious, and you don't have a complete script at the time, and you don't even have like your cast locked into place. You know that it's going to be effects heavy. 13 months is a pretty short turnaround. So they'll agree to do it. They want to know how much will this movie cost, and Reitman had no idea. He just kind of thinks, well, Stripes cost $10 million. I'll triple that, and I can make Ghostbusters for, 25 to 30. So Price says, okay. He greenlights the movie, says it needs to be ready by June 8, 1984. Go for it. They greenlit this movie, and I don't really think that they had a whole lot of faith that it was going to be a big hit.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of like, if we keep the budget relatively low, even though 30 mil for a 1984 movie is a little steep, but I guess they figured that they could lose that money because I don't think that they had much faith in it being a hit.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of, if they can deliver the movie, we won't lose a whole lot of money on it. So they're trying to figure out what to do. They're trying to come up with a completed script. I think they get it to a point where they have it complete. They do offer it to Eddie Murphy still, but if I'm not mistaken, Murphy turns it down because he is going to make Beverly Hills Cop, which came out the same year, and we've mentioned this before.
Mm-hmm.
That Beverly Hills Cop was the biggest hit of 1984, and Ghostbusters was just behind it. But Murphy wants to do Beverly Hills Cop, so he turns this down. So they kind of retool the script again, try to figure out if they can get Bill Murray. I think they were looking at like Tom Hanks, Chevy Chase, who Aykroyd knew from Saturday Night Live, Robin Williams even. They were thinking of for the part that eventually became Peter Venkman. It was only when Murray talked to Columbia and said, "Hey, I'll do the movie if you finance my passion project." He wanted to make this movie called The Razor's Edge.
Okay.
And it was his passion project. He had co-wrote the script. While it was going to star in it. I've never seen the movie, just reading the write-up, it sounds pretty dramatic. It's not a comedy at all. Sounds pretty heavy. And I think he knew that it was going to be hard to get made, but he said, hey, I'll star in this, this big budget blockbuster movie if you finance this movie. Columbia agreed to finance The Razor's Edge. Then Murray said, "Okay, I'll do the film." And then they start looking to cast the rest of the parts. I thought it was odd. I read that they were looking at like Christopher Walken or Jeff Goldblum, or I think even Christopher Lloyd for the role of Egon. But Ramis is like, no, I want to play him. And that, I kind of find it hard to believe that as great as all those other guys are, that they would be as good as Ramis.
No, he was born to do that role.
He's great in it, and he's so deadpan throughout all of it.
Yeah.
Even the lines he has that are supposed to be funny, the way he delivers them in like that super serious way, makes them even funnier. So he decides to do the film. Aykroyd obviously is in it, and the character that gets shortchanged, unfortunately, is the Winston Zeddemore character, because when it was Eddie Murphy, that was a much bigger character, and then I think the rationale was, well, we got Bill Murray, he's supposed to kind of be the comic relief of the movie, because Ramis and Aykroyd are more serious in it. So because they have Bill Murray and he's the comic relief, they made the role of Winston Zeddemore, who was supposed to be the Eddie Murphy role, they made that role smaller, and he doesn't show up until it's not necessarily halfway through the film, but it's probably 45 minutes into the movie before Winston Zeddemore shows up. And that's kind of a shit thing for Ernie Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Ernie Hudson saw the script where Winston had a bigger role, and he's really excited about that. He signs on to the movie, I think takes a pay cut to be in the movie, and then kind of finds out later on, almost as they're ready to shoot, that his role got reduced. So that's unfortunate, because Ernie Hudson's great in the movie, and he's got a bunch of great lines too. I don't know why exactly he doesn't join until later.
Well, he's supposed to be kind of like the new recruit, right?
Yeah. But it takes a while for him to show up, and I don't know what the original script was, or the draft that had him show up earlier in the film. I don't know how he was fitting into that at that point in time with the previous draft. But it sounded like they wanted someone, like you said, a recruit, like someone who was an outsider, to come in, because these guys, Peter Venkman, Ray Stantz, and Egon Spengler all worked together at Columbia University at the start of the film. So they all know each other. They all go into business together with each other. And Winston Zeddemore is like the outsider who comes in. But unfortunately, with this draft that they went with, he shows up later, as opposed to, I think when I was watching some of the making of, I think he showed up like on page 25 or something. And in this version, he doesn't show up till like page 65. But who else? You mentioned Rick Moranis,
mm-hmm.
who is in the role that they wanted John Candy for. John Candy was in Stripes, so Reitman and Ramis and Murray had worked with him before. And I think John Candy had these crazy ideas for how he wanted Louis Tully to be. He had the weird German accent. He had Schnauzer dogs, and Reitman didn't care for those ideas. So he said no, and then because he said no, Candy turned it down. But they went with Rick Moranis, who Candy had worked with on SCTV, which was another great sketch comedy show. So they have this. They're ready to go. They're ready to start shooting, it's now like